Ace had jotted down a logo for the flyer for our Bleecker Street loft shows. He was a pretty decent artist. I took his sketch and used it as the basis for a series of KISS logos I designed, ultimately arriving at the one that has adorned all things KISS for the past 40 years. The SS in the logo actually consists of one S that is thicker than the other, with different proportions, and they aren't exactly parallel because I just eyeballed it. Ace's concept was closer to the Nazi SS. I certainly suspected that was his inspiration, and the fact that a few years later he bought Nazi memorabilia on our first European tour confirmed this in my mind. When I drafted the logo, I certainly never intended to court controversy at the expense of victims of history. I didn't want that on my conscience.
We were exhausted from touring, but we had careers to build, so as soon as the first album began to lag, we went right back into the studio to record our second, which was titled Hotter Than Hell. In fact, there was only one difference between the first album and the second, but it was a big difference, a 3,000-mile difference.
Neil rented Village Recorder out by the beach in Santa Monica and flew out Richie and Kenny. The studio was in a cool old building with a huge mural on one side of it depicting a post-apocalyptic cityscape.
The culture shock was tremendous. We felt out of place in a million small ways, because we were a New York band with New York attitudes. The record label rented us cars, but that was just asking for trouble. Ace and Peter drank too much and drove too fast and cracked up their cars.
It was a fun album to do. We tracked that in L.A. I remember one crazy day, Joe Cocker came walking in the studio and he was really loaded. And I fell down on the couch. And, there's been a lot of crazy moments in the studio.
Walking around one morning after breakfast, I noticed Lyle Tuttle's tattoo parlor on Sunset Boulevard. I walked in. I decided I would get one tattoo. I swore to myself that it would be one, just one, for life. I knew I didn't want a skull with a top hat or a battleship or mom, so I settled on a rose on my shoulder. Back at the hotel with my new ink, I called home. I was excited and also wanted to ruffle my parents' feathers, I guess. Guess what, Mom? I just got a tattoo. Huh? Oh, Stan, my mother said, referring to a Jewish cultural taboo. Now you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Cut my arm off, Mom. It's not going to matter to me.
Recording was smooth, more or less, although Peter and Ace were a handful. Ace had his usual problems showing up on time, and Peter was, as Peter has always been, deeply insecure about his role in the process. There's one song on there, Strange Ways, that was written by Ace, and while we were recording, Peter insisted on playing a long drum solo. When we heard it, we all thought it was ridiculous, and we insisted that it come off the record. Peter dug in his heels. If the solo went, he said, he would quit the band. This wasn't the first time he had given us an ultimatum, and it wouldn't be the last. We responded to it the way we always responded to his ultimatums. We ignored them, cut the drum solo out, and did what we knew was best for the band. He didn't quit.
One of my favorite solos that I've done is the one in Strange Ways. I think that's kind of a unique solo.
We tried to get Ace to sing Strange Ways or Parasite. Again, he refused to sing on the album.
I remember writing it relatively quickly, and I remember at the time I still didn't feel comfortable as the lead vocalist, so I asked Peter to sing it. Me becoming a vocalist was a slow evolution.
That's a great song. I forgot all about that song. That was a great song. I remember when Ace came in and said, "Hey, Cat, I got something really cool to play for you." Like, what do you got? "Oh, it's so strange." I said, "Oh, I gotta sing it, man." So I'm with you, man. Give me more of those Strange Ways. I was thrilled that I was doing an Ace Frehley song. I was really excited that Ace got a song in there, and it was so off cuff, basically, for what we were kind of, our sound for my voice was so not pretty much straight on rock. I felt as Paul's was or Gene was. I felt I was a soul singer. I still am. I love R&B. You know that I love to sing R&B. And I remember doing it, and we all got a kick out of it. There was no bitter. There was no. Everybody was really excited about it. It was a good thing.
It's funny, when I listen to some of those songs, they seem a lot slower than I remembered. And the production's a little drier. Back then we didn't have digital reverbs, and and all the special effects we have today. But I mean, I still think it holds up, you know.
We weren't yet to the point where we had to desperately try to get a solo out of him before he passed out in the studio. Peter seemed to resent everything he was given. It was a no-win situation. The fact that he was given things further highlighted his inability to contribute. He began to vent his inner turmoil and feelings of insecurity by trying to make everyone else as miserable as he was inside. Peter also resented me for not paying my dues, as he constantly put it. As far as I saw it, Peter hadn't succeeded before hooking up with us because he had no idea what it took to become successful or to sustain success. Now he was along for the ride and couldn't help trying to hamper things and create strife. I didn't begrudge anybody's limitations, but I definitely begrudged Peter's attitude, the animosity and conniving.
At least a song per album. Eddie Kramer had a lot to do with that. And Ace didn't really sing much back in the day, and I was happy when he finally stepped up to bat and then he got to sing, because his earlier songs he wrote, he gave me to sing, which I was honored. I think when you guys are out there and you're listening to Kiss records, you don't see what I look like. I mean, we're not in your living room sitting there next to you in makeup and having a beer with you. You know, your heart's feeling my voice. Your soul's feeling what I'm giving you. You're feeling what we're giving you, what the band gave you. You can't fake that. You can't replace that. It's called chemistry.
Another day I was on my way to the studio in a rental car when a police car pulled up behind me and turned on its lights and siren. I pulled over. I was wearing my usual off-duty uniform of hip-hugger jeans, really low rise, with about a 3-inch zipper, platform boots, ruffled woman's blouse, and jewelry, with my hair tumbling in long curls over my shoulders.
Wow.
In New York, this wasn't a big deal at the time. The officer walked over to the side of my car. "License and registration, please." "It's a rental. I have no idea where the registration is," I said, as I reached for my wallet. My wallet wasn't in my pocket. "I left it, I don't have my wallet," I stammered. "I must have left it at the hotel." In New York, not having my license with me had never been a problem. "Well then," the cop said, "you're going to jail." I nearly pissed my pants. I turned as white as a sheet. "Jail? Look at me. You can't take me to jail looking like this." The cop looked at me. He must have seen my terror. "Be sure to carry your license next time," he said, and motioned for me to drive off. Note to self, always carry wallet.
Norman Seeff, who had been a brain surgeon in Africa before he became a photographer, did the cover shoot for Hotter Than Hell. He was entirely competent and professional, but he was a guy who believed that when you do a photo session, you have to create a certain ambiance. He probably explained this philosophy to us on the phone, but before we went down to his studio, we didn't know quite what to expect. When we got there, it was like stepping into another world. He had a number of girls, and they were walking around half naked with silver paint all over them. There were mirrors on the ceilings and pieces of furniture suspended from wires. The whole feel was very surreal, like the Twilight Zone. Everyone got drunk, except for me. Paul got so drunk that at the end of the shoot, we had to carry him out and lock him in the back seat of our car so he wouldn't wander away.
You know, when you mention Hotter Than Hell, the first thing that comes to mind is the cover, because it was so revolutionary. We got one of the best photographers in California, Norman Seeff, to shoot the black and white photo session. And I had gotten into a car accident the night before, and I could only put makeup on half my face.
The photo shoot was also interesting because a few days earlier, Ace had decided to see how well and how fast he could drive his car down a winding Beverly Hills mountain. As it turned out, he couldn't do it very well. He smashed up the car and his face.
Ace was increasingly self-destructive in a way that chipped away at his talent. One night he repeatedly drove his rental car down a steep winding road to see how fast he could go and still make the turn at the bottom. The ultimate outcome of the experiment would have been obvious to anyone but an inebriated Ace. And sure enough, he finally lost control of the car and wrapped it around a pole.
For the photo, we had to superimpose the left side of his made-up face over the scarred right side.
Working with Norman was great, and I believe he came up with the Japanese artwork idea around the black and white photo. And I thought the cover was very distinctive looking and wasn't reminiscent of anything I remember seeing. So I thought that broke some new ground. The music, when I think of Hotter Than Hell, I don't think it was probably as exciting as our first album, because those songs we had been playing and recording and working on for years, and all of a sudden, our record company goes, "You got to do another record," and we had to throw these songs together.
One day I entered the studio and looked around. "Where's my guitar?" I asked. "Wait, where's my amp?" "Oh," one of the studio employees said. "They already came and picked up all the gear."
What?
"What are you talking about?" "Yeah, they came for it already. They were here. Said they had come to pick it up." Thieves had dispensed with any high-tech scheme and just walked in and said they were a shipping company and made off with all our gear. The easiest way out was through the front door. We got reimbursed and bought new gear, but some of my guitars, like my Flying V, had been custom-made and could never be replaced. We had switched to flying commercial flights from gig to gig, getting picked up and driven to and from hotels, while the gear caught up with us by truck and met us at the venue. We had also moved up to Holiday Inns instead of roadside motor lodges. It was easy to think we'd won the lottery as I put another quarter in the vibrating bed each night. At some point, in addition to having our own rooms, we even began to rent a spare room dubbed the Chicken Coop, where we could party and girls could wait their turn instead of loitering in the lobby. After a show, we would retire to our individual hotel rooms to freshen up, and then the phone would ring. "The Chicken Coop is room 917, the tour manager would tell us. We'd go down to a room full of girls, all of whom wanted to go back to our rooms. Some of them came from the concert audience. Others were connected to a local radio station, or knew somebody who knew somebody on the crew, or at our label, or whatever."
When I wasn't chasing girls, I was trying to keep Ace and Peter out of trouble. It took some doing, especially in Ace's case. Originally, Peter and Ace had roomed together, but after a while, they didn't get along. Peter asked me if I would mind if he roomed with Paul, and I roomed with Ace. It didn't bother me. We were all in the same band. One night I was going down to the hotel bar to see if there were any girls for the taking. I asked Ace if he wanted to come along. "Nah," he said. "You go ahead. I'll be down in a little while." I went by myself, and of course there were girls, and I started talking to them. And after a while, though, I started to wonder where Ace was. I called up to the room, and no one answered. Then I got a little worried. I got one of the hotel managers, and we went to the room and knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Finally, we smashed open the door. Ace was in the bathtub, passed out, and slumped down with the water rising. His mouth was just above the water. He would have died in a minute. He smelled like a pickled herring. We pulled him out of the water naked and put him to bed. I stayed up all night to make sure he didn't roll over and fall to the ground, which he did anyway, or throw up and choke on his own vomit. By the next morning, I was exhausted. Ace wasn't. He bounded out of bed, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. "Hey," he said, "I stayed in last night and went to bed early. What did you do?"
Huh?
He didn't remember a single minute of the ordeal.
Well, me and Gene used to room together. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but, me and Gene are a lot closer and get along a lot better than most people would think. And, Gene's bark is a lot worse than his bite. And but my favorite quality about Gene is he tells you like it is. He doesn't, say one thing and then behind your back say something else. He'll tell you right to your face what he thinks. And that's what I like about Gene, his straightforwardness. Marketing genius, big question mark, but we'll see.
You